Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the Cleveland International Film Festival Filmmakers Panel, hosted by Cleveland State University School of Film and Media Arts. My name is Eric Siler, and I'm on the faculty here at the Film School. We're very pleased to be joined by three dynamic filmmakers for our panel, Impact, Making a Difference, One Camera at a Time. And joining us today, first, closest to me, is Asia. Asia is the director of Beyond, and Asia Johnson. Next to Asia Johnson, we have Dion. Dion Johnson. Dion Johnson is the director of Forever Free and the Illiteracy Playbook. And next to Dion, we have Christy Chan. Christy is the director of Somewhere to Be. Hello, everyone. Good to see all you and welcome.
How you doing? Thank you.
And so, if you haven't had a chance, they'll tell information about their films at the end, and I hope you all can get a chance to see the films. I've seen each one of their films, and I look forward to hopefully seeing all their films again. But I'll just start out with all three of you in general, just to give the audience an idea of what your films are about. Can you just tell everyone a synopsis of your film and why you made the film that you did? And I'll just start with you, Asia, and work our way down to Dion and Christy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Asia. The film that I co-directed alongside Michael Kleiman right there is called Beyond. Beyond is a film about men who are currently incarcerated in Sing Sing who are on a healing journey, and they are healing themselves, participating in the healing of one another, and like the camaraderie and the build up to this event that they have every year called Beyond the Block, where they share stories, they share music, poetry, and the guests are loved ones, legislators, people who are invested in the criminal legal system, whether they are making laws or they have loved ones inside. And so we filmed inside of Sing Sing for about 3 to 4 months, documenting everything from day of audition all the way up to day of the performance. And then we took deeper dives on some of the guys' stories. This film is not about prison, it's about healing, it's about what it means to have the world see you in a box and to think outside that box, to imagine a world where you're not in that box, and to think beyond these prison gates that have caged you for so long for some of these guys. And I would say that I made this film, because it was an opportunity to work with my good friend Michael, who we had worked together in the past. We worked together on a short film with John Legend on bail. And then when he asked me to co-direct this piece with him, I couldn't help but think about my father, who was incarcerated before I was born, and he went in at the age of 23, and I just saw how, for lack of better words, like that tore him to pieces. And when he came home to a world that was not welcoming, that was not forgiving, that was not loving. And this film is my chance to like build a world where all of us are seeing how we are connected, and not just to the free people, but to people who are inside, to people who've been traumatized, to people who've society has said, like, you don't mean anything and you need to be relegated to this space forever. And Beyond is just this film that shares their joy, their dreams, and their hope to one day be free.
So, and why did you make the film?
I made the film to honor anybody who's ever felt invisible. And I know that I have felt that way. I myself was incarcerated at the same age that my dad went in, and it was more so about my dad than it was about me. But in college at Michigan, I know I'm in Ohio, but you know, I wanted to be a video music director. And once I stepped foot in that prison, I realized that yes, music and art is important, but more important are like the stories of those whose stories are not told, the stories of people who the world has said you don't matter. And I just want to live a life where I remind people every single day, whether they're famous or not, or free or not, that you do matter.
Wonderful, thank you. And Dion, tell us about the film and why you made it.
Yeah, sure. Let me begin by saying that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
What's the name of it again?
Beyond.
Beyond. Okay, so yeah.
We have to see each other's films.
Yeah,
All of us, yes.
We have to. Everybody go see Beyond, please, because I'm definitely gonna be there. That sounds that sounds amazing. And what's interesting is I think there's a lot of common themes Our film is a little bit different, but there are some themes like we deal with, incarceration, but we're focused more on literacy, the literacy aspect of it. But to tell you a little bit about my film, I'll talk about my film now, and then I'll ask you some more about yours later. But my film is Forever Free and the Illiteracy Playbook. Screening tomorrow morning at 9:45. Please come out. But yeah, basically the film is based on the fact that we are in the middle of an illiteracy crisis in this country that for generations has treated literacy not as a right, but as a gateway for power. So by tracing how literacy has been denied and reclaimed throughout American history, especially in the African American community, we expose the intentional barriers that are pretty much set up to deny agency and opportunity. So in this film, you'll see a lot of personal stories. Like I have family in the film. My mother is in the film, kind of telling a little bit about her story, historical story. We got pillars of the community in this film. We've got pastors. We have law enforcement in this film. We have business people. We have educators in this film. We have politicians, mayors and county, city council. So we've got all these different voices in this film, lending their personal stories, lending their take on the topic. And we mix all of that with archival footage and we put it in an historical context. And through that, we show how literacy is a liberation tool. But I will end by saying this. More than anything, the film it's a call to action. It's a call to action for people to recognize literacy as the front line to freedom. It's a call to action just to get engaged with your families first, get engaged with your communities, and more than anything, it's a call to action to identify and stamp out any of these structures that still exist that would deny literacy for anyone. So that is, in a nutshell, Forever Free and the Illiteracy Playbook. Hope to see you guys there.
Okay, and you made it because you wanted to?
Yeah, why did I make it? It's kind of a loaded question, why I made it. I can't take credit for the initial idea for the film. I'm actually here at the festival with a couple of the executive producers of the film. So my company, I have a company with my wife, we co-run a company called J Media. We do all things media, book publishing, film, video, photography, you name it, we do it. We've been working with this nonprofit for a while, and they do a lot of things in the community, and we kind of partner with them. So one thing that they do is they do a lot of things around literacy. So they realize we do film. We've done a lot of other things with them, but they were like, we do film, and they approached me and said, we want to do this short documentary on the topic of literacy. And pretty much they just wanted to make sure that we touched upon the importance of literacy, maybe talk a little bit about just some historical figures like Frederick Douglass, if I can get it out, Maya Angelou, Ben Carson, a newer voice, Amanda Gorman, and they wanted it to be about 15 to 20 minutes. And for me, it was a no-brainer because literacy was always kind of a big deal for me. Like, my mother's she always kind of pushed literacy. So from being a little kid, that was important to me. So when they approached me, it was, of course I will do this. As I started doing research and I started thinking back, I started having a lot of questions kind of form in my head. I started thinking, okay, I remember Riff, maybe dating myself, reading is fundamental, and the conjunction junction, what's your function, the Schoolhouse Rock, right? I'm just a bill, all of that stuff. You guys remember that? Well, maybe not, but I remember that, right? Being younger. And I remember hearing about the importance of literacy from a young age. And I remember hearing also about this literacy crisis from a young age. So I started kind of thinking, all right, the more research I did, the more I thought about it. We've been talking about an illiteracy crisis for about half a century now, 50 years, the same literacy crisis. So if everybody agrees that literacy is important and that we're in an illiteracy crisis, why does it still exist? Why have we not moved the needle on this thing? So I started digging more and more, and I started uncovering some things, and I went back to the executive producers and I said, there's a lot more here than 15, 20 minutes. And I think people don't recognize, number one, the issue with the current illiteracy crisis, what it really means. And I think there's some things that people don't understand about why it exists. And I think that's the question that we need to zero in on. Why does it exist? And then once we understand that, then we can start to solve it. And I told them, listen, it's not going to cost you any extra. I will do what needs to be done. I will invest in this thing in whatever way I need to invest in it to make sure this story gets told. But if it's going to be impactful, it's got to be holistic. We've got to approach this thing from a holistic standpoint. And it's definitely got to be more than 15, 20 minutes. So that was kind of what was behind what turned into this full feature-length film on the topic.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, Christy?
Both these films sound amazing, and I can't wait to see them. My name is Christy Chan. I'm the writer-director of Somewhere to Be. Somewhere to Be is my love letter, my cinematic love letter to immigrant families and all families that have experienced discrimination. It's about a Chinese-American mother and daughter who pull up to a gas station in the 1980s, and they are refused service. Only instead of complying, the mother refuses to leave. So it's a short film, it's a narrative film, and it has fictionalized aspects, but it is based on emotional truths that I experienced growing up as a child in a very segregated part of the Southeast. Yeah, the film is from the point of view of an 8-year-old girl, and so it could be seen as a coming of, what the film industry likes to call a coming of age story of a child, but to me it's really a coming of age story of our country, because these types of power dynamics are not new. They've been around forever. The way our country was founded was ingrained with colonizing power dynamics and white supremacy. But what I really enjoyed about having the opportunity to make this film was to tell the story from a child's point of view and in a way that I hadn't grown up being told. I didn't grow up watching movies or seeing movies where you saw the immigrant family fighting back. I didn't grow up seeing movies where you saw Asian women being full, fierce characters. I didn't see the type of women I knew in real life in movies. So I wanted to make a film that felt emotionally honest and would hopefully speak in a way that is not typically shown about an immigrant family. It is a dark comedy. There's tension and drama, but there's also joy in the resistance. So.
Oh, wonderful. And again, please try to see all the films if you here at the festival. I'll start with you, Dion. It's the same question to everyone. We're in a time in which there's legislation, executive orders to try to not have content like this out here. And all of your films were made recently, and knowing what's going on in the country, how did you develop your film knowing that there's this push not to have your voices expressed in terms of film? I mean, Dion, there's some states that probably won't even show your film too with this push now. So I'll start with you. How did you develop this film knowing how things are developing in this country?
Excellent question. Excellent question. I think I developed it with my eyes wide open, understanding what it was that I was doing, and I guess really the position that I may have been putting myself in. Because I do contracting for DOW, contracting, so I know doing this type of film in that type of work could actually put my head on the chopping block. So, but to me, there's a time where, you got to stand up for something. I mean, you have to stand up for something. I mean, that's what we need people to do, to stop worrying about, what's going to happen, and you just have to stand up for what you believe in. So, You know, it's interesting. We started before the current administration was elected and took power. So I was actually oddly concerned about how the film would land if the current president didn't get elected, if the other candidate won, because I naively actually thought that the other candidate had a chance to win. So I thought, you know, people would look and see that she won and they wouldn't recognize that there's still an underlying problem. So that was my concern. But then, you know, once the results came out that came out, I said, well, this actually works for the message of the film, because now people will really be able to understand and look at the message of the film for what it is. So to me, for this film, it actually worked out that I could, you know, pull from some of the things that were happening and help people to understand this issue based on some of the things that are actually happening in real time in this country, and how we could tie that to some things that were happening in history, which was critical. So, and that's one of the things I try to do in this film. So we go back, we look at the history, and then, you know, there's anti-literacy laws that existed in history, right? So there's no secret. They tell you point blank, we don't want people to read, because if they read, we can't control them. It was all laid out there, right? So that was easy. So now what we have to do is we have to slowly bring that up to what it looks like today to help people understand. So to answer your question, the things that are happening, I think, kind of helped to make the message a little plainer.
Yeah, your film is a response to
Yes,
that.
yes.
Very good. And Christy, what about you? Knowing what's going on in the world and the country?
I mean, I'm sure everyone in this room has heard the word no said to them frequently. My relationship to the word no, whether spoken or as a messaging from our culture, has changed a lot over the past 3 decades of my creative work. In 2019, a different project I did from this film, a public art project, was censored. In the current administration, it was the first time they were in power when I experienced this censorship. And just to paint a picture, in the United States, less than 1% of public art commission funding goes to women of color. But in 2019, the year my project, which was about representation of immigrant voices and BIPOC voices, the year my public art project was censored, 85% of censored projects were by women of color. So those odds, you know, put together, that's not a coincidence. So, you know, I think for me, in a strange way, even though it can be traumatic to feel silenced or harassed, or to feel in some sense overpowered or even bullied by cultural and political forces, for me, after that censorship happened, it was like, okay, the gloves are off. I have nothing to lose. If I'm gonna do this project that was meant to uplift communities and was seen as very positive by most people who saw it and broke public art records, if I'm gonna do that kind of work and still get censored, then I have nothing to lose. I will appoint myself completely free of the people's no's, of the people who say no. And even though it was traumatic at the time, in a weird way, I think it might have been a good thing that happened, because I used to have this question in my mind: how do I balance how I talk about my work or make my work so that I can make it? And after that happened, I realized, you know what, I have no control over that. You can, you know, and even the history of this culture, of our country, each time the progressive movements have tried to meet fascism halfway, fascism does not come halfway. Fascism just keeps moving further towards fascism and white supremacy. So I think I decided there was nothing to lose. And this film, in a way, is in some ways me coming back from that experience. That experience happened in 2019. for about a year and a half after the experience, I felt very numbed and unsure how to move ahead as an artist in a long-term way. And then I started working on this short film actively in about 2021, 2022. And I'll mention that my short film is part of a longer feature film, to which I've also heard many, many no's. Like, this film should not get made. Why are you making this film? Why is an Asian woman making a film about white supremacy? This doesn't make sense, you know? I've actually turned down funders for the feature film because they've looked at the film and said, I will fund this if you make the family not Asian. And so, you know, perhaps some overlap with what you were saying, Dion. I think it's really important to keep listening to yourself, listening to your own community, and knowing what is true on a soul level of what you're doing, and not, for me, I don't worry too much about the market. I don't even worry too much about the gatekeepers. I know that my time on this planet as a human is short, my time as an artist is limited, and I just really want to leave behind something that's going to speak truth and mean something to people. So to me, I could hear 1,000 no's. I could hear a no from the freaking president of the United States, but the yes that I feel within my own community, the yeses I feel within the potential audience, that is the yes that matters. That is the voice that matters.
Well said, well said. And Asia, what about you?
I identify with almost everything, literally everything you said, Christy, about, so co-directing with Michael and I, I'm like the forever optimist, like, oh yes, and everybody's gonna tell us yes. And Michael's like, let me just prepare you, because he's done feature-length film. This is my first feature, this is his third. He's like, people are gonna say no. And I'm like, well, I have a middle finger for everybody who's gonna tell us no, and I'm gonna find a way. And in our relationship, like, I'm the one like ready to fight, because for what is right, for standing up, like you said, for your people, for your community. And that's one of the things that, like, co-directing alongside Michael has been it's been so beautiful, because we both care so deeply about people and about the stigma that people who've, even whether you've been imprisoned or incarcerated or not, like, if you've ever made a mistake, no one wants to be held accountable for that one mistake for the rest of their life. If you got into a fight with your wife and you said some mean things, and like 30 years later, like, well, remember when you said that thing to your wife? Like, we remember that. And also, I know we all know that the United States incarcerates more people than any other country in the world. And that is something that I fight against and want to change. And so when you ask, like, the state of the world, I'm like, it's more important than ever to make the films that we're making right now. It's more important than ever to stand up for what we believe in equality and justice, and making sure that people are getting the things that they need. And I don't care if the president is saying, I don't care what he says. It's about what your community, like you said, what your audience, what your community, what your people are saying on the ground. Because the people in the ivory towers, yes, they oftentimes control the money, and they oftentimes control whether your film gets funded or not. I am always willing to tell a funder no. Like, if you want me to make these changes, or if I know I deserved something, this film deserved something and it didn't get it, but you want to give us crumbs, I can go find something better. And I think that it's really important to be able to say no, and when somebody tells you no, to be able to fight back and say, your no doesn't mean much, and this is why. And so I've become less and less pragmatic, and I think that could be a bad thing, but I'm also more of a fighter now for not just what I believe is right, but for people who I know don't have the resources or the luxury or the wherewithal right now to stand up for what they believe, and to stand up for their own stories, and to be the curator of their own story. And so if I have to, like, continue putting pennies together to make these films and saying F philanthropy, I'm gonna make it work on my own, and Michael and I, like, just being the little train, the little engine that could with Beyond, like, it's worth it, because I know that the communities that we're affecting and impacting are going to be the ones to affect real change eventually.
Wonderful. Well said, all of you. For the next question, I'll start with Christy. It's kind of a loaded question, but still, think about this. Who is the antagonist in each of your films? And you can label who you think is the antagonist, but Christy, with your film, I want you to go beyond the owner of the gas station. It was more than just that person as being the antagonist. Who do you consider the antagonist?
I often think about things in terms of larger systems and structures, and in the types of films that I make, each character is a representation or an amalgamation of many characters, of many periods of time. So even though the character in this film exists in 1985 at a gas station, he could actually be almost anyone. The white gas station owner, he could be almost anyone in America. And he learned, and this character, even though we don't tell his side of the story, he probably grew up in an environment where he inherited his white privilege, inherited his proclivity towards violence. And he's a certain, as represented by the actor, he's a certain age, but he could be any age. And so, it's, in terms of the antagonist, I think what I hope people can take away is that these things are complex. It's not just about one person. And it's about what produced that person. And in a way, sitting here in the year 2026, we have all inherited things that happened hundreds of years ago. And we've all been, to this day, assigned roles to play in terms of, are you this person? Are you this person? And I know that as an Asian American, I feel like I've constantly been assigned the role of a minority, the role of silence, the role of compliance. And I refuse those roles. And so I think all of us have an opportunity to say, okay, based on our country's history, this is the role I'm being assigned, but do I want this role? Can I refuse this role? Can I refuse to be, whether you're considered the victim or the antagonist, can I refuse this role and make something new? Can I contribute to something new? Just like there is, in a film, the role of an antagonist. In a film, sometimes there is a role of a protagonist. And what I find sometimes just in my journey of filmmaking is when I present an Asian American character in a film role, sometimes people also want to see trauma porn, victim porn. And I also refuse to do that. So if you all decide to go see this movie about essentially a segregated culture producing a power dynamic in a film setting, bear in mind, you may not be getting the trauma porn you're used to seeing. So it's a really interesting and rich question, because to me it speaks to the bigger question of how do we want to see ourselves? Do we have power over how our systems keep continuing and assigning these roles? And I think we do. And I think things are actually, despite who's in power, despite the way the arts is being defunded, I think every artist, every audience person, every person in this country does have the power to help redefine what these assigned scripts are in our lives, in our day-to-day lives, in our art forms.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'll come on down here. Asia, who do you consider the antagonist?
I think that is a question that I want the audience to grapple with at the end of Beyond. I'm very sure that these guys in this film are the heroes, but I want people, the heroes of their own story, and just the courage that it took to show up and share with strangers every single day for months, to talk about their childhood, to talk about what went wrong in their lives, or to critique a system that they're living under and living in, knowing that there is an officer right outside the door and they're talking about how horrible the conditions are, how horrible the prison is, or how they feel dehumanized every single day. And that took, on their part, I just cannot, I can't wrap my mind around the courage that it took every day to show up and to be strong and vulnerable at the same time. Like, they were so soft. And you don't think about softness when you think about men who are incarcerated. You don't think about their tears. You don't think about them missing their moms or their children. And so when you ask who the antagonist is, I challenge like the audience to walk away from Beyond and ask why does the United States incarcerate these people for sometimes their entire lives? People are dying in jails and prisons across the country. And I don't want to be the one to tell, like, this is why and this is who's the bad guy. I want people to walk away and think about that, and not just think about it, but then do something.
That's excellent, excellent. Yeah, leave it to the audience.
Yeah.
Dion, who do you consider the antagonist in your film?
Perfect segue, as a matter of fact, because you said that you don't want to try to answer the question of why. My film actually seeks to try to answer the question why that is. And the antagonist behind that would be basically the power structures, the systemic power structures, the top wage earners, the political elite. And I know these are buzzwords, but that's what it is. And one thing about that, when you have that type of means, those types of means that they have, it's not difficult for them to follow a common playbook to try to keep that power and those means. And so that's why they are the antagonists pretty much of this story. Well, I'm not going to get too much. You definitely got to see the film, but I mean, I just see a lot of common threads. I see a lot of common threads in all these films. The only thing I would add to that, it's easy, I think, to see my film and you may think that the antagonist would be like, white supremacy or something like that, but it's not. It's exactly what I said, like it's those power structures. Like I'll give you an example. One thing that I actually didn't get a chance to talk much about in the film, an example, Bacon's Rebellion. I don't know how many people have heard of Bacon's Rebellion, but basically it was a rebellion, a few hundred years ago where the slave population, the African-American population, and the working class whites got together. Now, in full disclosure, it wasn't great for the Native Americans, but that's a whole different topic. But they got together because basically they looked at the establishment, the power structure, and said, yeah, there's some stuff that's happening here we don't like. It's affecting all of us. And they realized it was affecting all of them. And they got together and, they were given that power structure to business. I mean, they were giving it to them. I think somebody ended up dying, it ended up dying down, and then the power structure got together and they said, no, this is a problem. We can't have, because they look at themselves as the true minority that needs to be protected, because there's only a handful of these rich and powerful people in the political establishment. There's a handful of them. They see themselves as the minority that needs to be protected. And they saw that all of the population was getting together and was overpowering them. And they said, no, we have to do something about this. And then that's when they started setting out all of these different structures. They created the concept of race that we know today, because before then it didn't exist. They created this concept of race to kind of keep people separate. They started giving like the working class whites a little bit more, cachet. So now they felt like, okay, we're better than, the African American slaves. So it kept the population from getting together. So, white supremacy, obviously, it is a thing. It's a problem. There's white privilege, but really the real antagonist in all of this is the power structure that set up all these different things to stay in power and keep the general population suppressed.
Excellent, all of you. We're going to open up in a few minutes for questions, but what I want to know is you've had a chance to sit back, relax, look at the film, have it screened at festivals and get responses and so forth. And as filmmakers, you say to yourself, wow, I wish I had done this, I had done that. Now, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently in your films to make a stronger impact? Would you spend time more on a certain subject, explore a different theme, do another rewrite? What would you do differently now that you had a chance to reflect? I'll start with you, Asia. We'll work our way down.
I think I wish our collective attention spans were like longer. I feel like they get shorter and shorter because of social media and just like the busyness of our lives. There are so many rabbit holes that we could have went down as it relates to mass incarceration in our film, but then our film would have been 8 hours long. And no one's gonna sit in a movie theater for 8 hours. So I think that's my only, and that's not a critique of our film. I think it's a critique of like Americans' attention spans. And I'm complicit in that for sure. I think we did what we could within the confines of an institution, and we tried to make it as powerful and impactful as we could with like going into a prison. First of all, I can't believe they let me in, because I'm like, I want to burn all this down. But going into a prison, just without a camera crew is difficult. But now you're bringing in a camera crew and you're saying like, we want to hear from these men and we want to hear their stories. And I was in Michigan. I live in LA now, but I'm from Michigan, like I said. And in Michigan, they would never let a camera crew in any of their prisons. And so in New York, I do think that for as long as prisons exist, New York is really trying to do it right. You can't do prison right. You can't do prison right. But they try to have some sort of transparency and freedom for people to come in and see what's actually happening inside. And so I'm not, grateful is the wrong word, because again, burning it all down. But I am happy that Michael and I were given so much access to the prison and to the people who are unfortunately live there. And there's nothing I don't think I would have done differently except give more background on the evolution of mass incarceration. We touched briefly on like the crack epidemic and how in the 80s, like they were really like locking up black people. And there was such a big difference between, and the super predator myth and locking kids up, 16, 15-year-old kids and throwing away the key. And so I wish we could have like dug deeper, but again, we couldn't, because we'd still be sitting here for a week. So, yeah.
To be continued.
To be continued.
Dion.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta agree. She kind of stole my answer, because, you know, I would like to say that I would do something different. I think it's always good to, you know, have self-reflection and be able to say, you know, I wish I had done this, but I think given the confines of, you know, what we had to work with, I think the film came together pretty well. You know, given the budget, given the time, you know, all the different constraints. So given all of that, I don't know that I would do anything different. What I would like to see happen after this is, again, just kind of continuing the story. Because one of the things I set out to do in the film, there's this concept of an illiteracy playbook that's laid out. So if you watch the film and you pay attention, you will actually see that there are 3 different areas that are identified in the playbook. This film really only tackles one area. It tackles the denying literacy part, because that is the focus point, you know, literacy. But it also talks about creating division as one leg and controlling the narrative as another leg. So we talk a little bit about the division and the narrative, but we don't get in depth because we needed to focus in, because like you said, if we did everything, you know, you've got a docu-series at this point. It's not just a documentary, and we were doing a documentary. So what I would like to see happen is we go on and we tackle some of these different elements of this illiteracy playbook. But again, given the constraints that we had, I feel pretty good about, you know, what was done.
Great. Okay, Christy?
Yeah, similar. I can't imagine that we would have done much differently. We really took our time with this short. It took about 3 years to make, and so there were lots of pauses that took place to get things right, and I just tried to trust that it was good to take those pauses and take our time. I think if there were any regret, I would have. I mean, and the whole team just did such an incredible job. The way the alchemy of our film was incredible. I guess if I would have one tiny regret, and I don't even know if it's a regret, but because it's all part of peeling the onion of the project, right? Is when we were first working on the edit. You know, there's this thing called demo love, where the song you put in as a placeholder becomes the thing you fall in love with. And I kind of fell in love with the Prince song that we had in as a placeholder. And we did actually try to get it. And then we, you know, for all the reasons we probably know, we couldn't get it, but we did make inroads. And then we tried to get another pop song. And then eventually I gave up on having an 80s pop song. And we found something else that worked. But I don't know, I think it was still part of the process. Sometimes as a maker, you just have to explore the thing you're drawn to and address it, because otherwise it'll just be like this little itch that that is unscratched. So I guess that's a non-regret, but it is something that like took a while. And but no, I'm just super proud of how it turned out. And I think it's worth mentioning that the 8-year-old actor who was in the film had never acted before, and the film is in both English and Mandarin Chinese, and she learned Chinese to take that role. She is a little girl who lives in Berkeley, California, and her parents had tutors for her, and she learned Chinese for the role. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Oh, one more question before I have the audience ask questions, and I'll start with you, Dion. What was the aha moment in each of your films? Whether it was through a particular day on set, doing the editing, doing research, he says, this is why I'm doing the film. And what can you recount a particular moment or a day in which you were working on this film and you said to yourself, this is why I'm doing this film? An example?
I think there's two moments that stick out to me. One moment, when I was doing the interviews, there was a pastor that I was interviewing, Pastor Whitlock. So he's a pastor of a church in Maryland, and you know, all the interviewees I think were pretty good, but you know, I asked him a question. And he just went in, like he has so much passion with his responses. Like he came ready. When I tell you he came ready, he was ready. He has so much passion. And you know, after I asked that first question, and you know, he just kind of went in, and you know, I didn't have to, you know, prod and pull. And after he got finished with the first answer, I just I sat back, I turned around, I looked at the rest of the crew. It was like, I mean, this was it. So, I mean, that was kind of an aha moment for me, because, you know, just that passion that he spoke with, the things that he actually brought out in the film that, you know, I didn't have to try to bring out. It was like, this is what I'm looking for. Like, this is the message. And it's coming from the people that it needs to come from. Like, it's not me, it's not, you know, a single person narrating. Like, these voices are coming together. So that was the aha moment, when all of these voices, especially, you know, him, but all of these voices kind of started to come together and started to form, you know, the key narratives of the film. So, you know, that let me know that, no, we really have something here. I think the second moment is probably getting a chance to interview my mother. Because, you know, she was able to talk a lot about, you know, historically speaking, because we talk a little bit about the segregation time frame, and we were able to get access to her old school. It was a colored school. It used to be called Farmville Colored School. Then it was renamed to HB Suggs. So that's how I always knew it. And it's a historical site. And so we were able to get access to it. It's a community center now. But she went to that school as a high school. My uncles and aunts went to that school. when I came up, it was an elementary school. So I actually spent time and went to that school as elementary school. My aunt taught there for decades, who also went to that school, not taught, but secretary there. When my kids came along, we would ship my kids down there to North Carolina to stay with their grandmother, and it was a community center, so they would go to community center programs down there. So we were able to get access and get in there and actually do some filming inside of that school. And so just being in there with all of that rich history and just knowing about the previous history as well of that school and what it meant to the community, and knowing what it's meant to my family, and being able to get in there and actually talk about that, and have my mother talk about how proud she was that it was still there. You know, that was also another moment where it kind of brought home this concept of community and the power that the community has, and what these schools and you know, all of this history means to the community. It's kind of like what you mentioned, Christy, about you know, not having this trauma porn, right? It's beyond the trauma of the situation. I mean, you want to recognize what's happening, but let's talk about how we get past that. And being in that moment, you actually feel, you know, the community. That's really that's how we get past. Like, we have everything that we need to solve these problems that we need to solve.
Well, great. And Christy, what moment did you experience that told you this is why I'm doing this film?
There are many aha moments. I guess one of the most memorable ones was the morning of the first day of our shoot. Everyone, we gathered the entire cast and crew in a circle before we started shooting. It was probably 6:30 in the morning, and the sun was just rising behind our location. And as we gathered in that circle, I realized, oh wow, we're all here to make this story happen. And it was just such a moment of like, and everyone had driven in from different places, and I had the realization that like, oh, it took, you know, it took us all a few hours to drive here, but it actually took me decades to get here, and you all are here to make it happen. And that was when I felt heard, in contrast to all the many no's, such a big yes. Like, I felt the yes in the whole space. And that was a really beautiful aha moment of like, yes, we were supposed to end up here.
Great.
Yeah.
And Asia.
I have two. The first one, the audience that we were most excited and nervous about showing this film to were the guys in Sing Sing. And so when we screened it for them before we premiered at Doc NYC, before we went on the festival, we were like, we got to get their sign on. We have to get this greenlit by our guys. And so Michael and I are sitting in the back of the library in Sing Sing, and the guys who are featured in the film and guys who are not featured in the film, because we interviewed dozens of people. But of course, again, like, we can only make an hour and a half, 2-hour film, so everybody's stories are not seen. And so Michael and I were really nervous about, are people gonna be upset? Are they gonna ask us, why didn't you feature my interview? And we were really, really worried. And as they're watching the film, you see guys rubbing each other's backs, you see guys crying, guys in it, the guys featured and the guys not featured. And then at the end, this guy, John Rizzo, comes up to us, and we were most nervous about him, because when we would bring that camera into the prison, John would be ready, camera ready. And John's story did not make it into the final cut. And John comes up to us and he's like, I know I wasn't in it, but I was in it. I saw my brothers, I saw my people, and my stories in every one of those guys' stories. And like, sigh of relief for us. And then of course we got emotional. We were just so happy that every single person, from even the commissioner of docs, like, he got emotional watching it, to our guys who were most important. That was the first aha moment. And the second one is, as you see the credits roll, you'll see like, my line says like, for my dad, and Michael Kleinman says for my mom. I lost my dad when I was 11, and Michael lost his mom like before we started shooting, like a couple years ago. And to know that our parents would be so proud of us for making this film, and for like the heart that we put into it, that was another moment that I was just like, wow, we did this.
Yeah, it's things like that that keeps you going, and just it's worth more than just about anything, doing that. Well, great. Audience, we have a microphone here, so questions, I invite you to come up to the microphone and ask questions to our filmmakers. Questions for anyone? Questions? Well, I'm sorry, I want to put Michael on the spot. Michael, can you come up here to the microphone for a second? Michael Kleinman.
Get up here.
And people can join them too. And Michael, Asia, tell us exactly who Michael is and how he worked on the film.
Michael has a production company that focuses on like social justice issues, and Michael had been working with this organization called Hudson Link, who goes into the prison system. They go into New York prisons and offer university college courses, and Michael had been working with them for a long time. And Michael and I worked together on the John Legend project, and we just like the magic that happens when we work together is really like you can see it. And so when he called me, I live in LA, he lives in Milwaukee, but he's from New York, and we were shooting a film in New York. And so it was kind of like, how are we gonna do this? And I was like, I'm there, of course. And so we started this journey.
Oh, that's great. And Michael, can you just tell us briefly your response to the impact that this film has had, knowing that you worked hard on it and you're seeing the results of it? Just tell us your response on the impact that this film has had.
I think the impact, for me, it's just getting started, right? Making the thing was the vehicle to have the impact. So it started in that law library at Sing Sing, watching it with the guys. We right now we're showing the film in prisons around the country. We're showing it with legislators, governors. We got this letter. We screened the film. The first prison outside of Sing Sing was a Dominguez State Jail outside of San Antonio, Texas. And they screened it, and we got this letter that wasn't to us. It wasn't addressed to us. It was addressed to the guys in the film. And the guy who wrote it talked about how he had been in and out of prisons his whole life since he was in his teens, and watching the guys in the film gave him the courage to dig deeper into his heart and ask himself the questions that they were asking on screen. And they asked, a lot of the film is about digging to the root of your trauma and getting there so you can heal from it. But that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of time and healing. And he wrote about how he had never been able to do that. He'd avoided that for decades. And watching the film had pushed him to really start digging into his heart, have a conversation with his heart, as the guys say in the film. And to me, that kind of impact is amazing to see. I hope the film gets people out of prison. I hope the film gets our guys out of prison first, but I hope it leads to changes in sentencing that get people home from prison without having to spend their decades there. But yeah, I think we're just starting on the impact.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michael, for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
And we have another question here. Come on up.
One brave soul, huh?
Yeah, brave soul. Yeah, real brave. Hi, my name's Talib. I'm a co-founder of House of Wax and Filmology. We're making a mental health film as well called You. You all are making very emotionally taxing films. How was it on set? Just then the debrief of after making something that's not only is it emotional, but it's personal, because each of you are explaining where it's coming from, and that can be hard.
Okay. I guess all of you can answer. Who wants to jump in first? Christy?
Yeah. I think not just right after the production, but after so many phases, there is emotional labor involved, and I'm always curious how different filmmakers answer this question. I think for myself, I'm always trying to build in decompression time as part of the process. I don't see it as a bonus. I see it as part of what needs to happen. And fortunately, the community of support and funders that help bring my film to fruition also believe in that. So sometimes I schedule retreats. For the collaborators I work with, I it's one of the reasons it took a long time, was just pacing out how much time we had. And just, small things like during the shoot and right after, I always make sure we have really good food on set, really, really good food, and people are well fed. And I think having just a thread of empathy for my collaborators and myself as we unpeel the story, that's something that guides me, because we can't just soldier through the process. There has to be humanity and grace in it, and so if I allow that to show up, then because I want people to show up as their whole selves when they work on a project, and they can't do that if there isn't time, I mean, that is the eternal struggle, though, is to have enough time to feel a sense of spaciousness. So, and I strive to do that in each project, whether it's achieved or not.
Great. Dion?
So I guess during production itself, it was largely interviews. I guess people were, they expressed their thoughts and feelings on certain topics. I guess it wasn't super emotional. I think the emotion probably came in for me personally, because during the post-production time frame, I was kind of losing my mother. She was declining, and unfortunately, she passed before we finished. I mean, it's been a while, so it's been over a year, so did not expect this.
But this is the debriefing now.
Yeah,
It's
so
ongoing.
I mean, it's been it's been part of a Jesus Christ.
That's good. That's good.
It's been a healing process for me. I guess I do need a tissue. I did not expect this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's been a healing, process for me. So being able to kind of throw myself into finishing, this project, and I think also just seeing when I was able to screen it with the executive producers, just kind of seeing their response as well, because the response was amazing. They saw it, and then after it was over, they kind of looked at each other, and I was concerned at first, because I'm thinking, what does that look about? And then they were just like, did we just see what we just saw? And so they kind of had this emotion like, wow, this is, because they felt good, because they were the executive producers and they funded this thing. They're saying this is a powerful tool. So I think, during that post-production phase and after post-production, I think that was where the emotion came in. So.
My worry, thank you for that. And losing a parent never gets easier. So it's been a year, and you said it's been a year, like it's been a long time, but in 5 years, this is gonna come up. So I know what it's like. So thank you for sharing that, and know your mom is super proud of you and proud of this film. My worry was never like, how am I gonna take care of myself after long days of shooting in the prison? My worry was always, how are the guys who just shared so vulnerably going to take care of themselves after? Because Michael and I get to go back to our hotels, we get to shower with the soap that we chose, we get to eat the food that we decided to eat that day, and the guys have to go back to these cells on the thing that they call a mattress, eat the food that has been chosen for them. We can decide to go to therapy, we can decide to go to the spa, we can do all these things if we make time to do them. And so, like, self-care is, as I'm talking, I'm like, I have a problem. Like, I don't take care of myself. But the guys, and for people who are inside who cannot engage in self-care on that level, like, that's always at the forefront of my mind.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you for that question. Yes, thank you.
Right,
Next.
yeah, thank you for breaking me down. I appreciate it.
Hi.
I'm Kayla. I don't know if I'm supposed to introduce myself, but I know that you spoke about the impact of the film, and you guys have talked a little bit on it. I just want to know if you can speak more on like the personal and social impact of your films, but also if you've seen anything like structurally with where we're at today, or what you would hope to see come from the things that you have made, and just your thoughts on, because art is a resistance, kind of, because I think that is truly kind of what you guys are doing, and I think today it's really, I mean, you spoke about how important it was, but I guess I'm asking more about, since you are taking part in that, like what you've seen come out of the work that you've put in, and your thoughts about art, like, being so important today.
Anyone? Start first.
We've seen, I don't want to give away the film, but like freedom is always the goal. And I think seeing people come home from prison is the impact that I'm most excited about, and it's happened. And I've heard the commissioner of DOCS in New York and people who make decisions on people's parole say like, this film is gonna free people. Mm-hmm. And not even just in New York, I think when other stakeholders in other states see it and they see the humanity behind the accusation or the charge or what's written down on paper, when they see past that, I think this film pushes people to think beyond whatever the charging document says. And so personally, I'm like, I want us to all be seen as for the potential that we have, for the good that we do, and not for whatever poor choices or bad things or mistakes that we've made. And so for me personally, I don't even know if I'm answering your question at this point, but like freeing people is the thing that I want our film to do, and like we've seen it. We've seen it.
Agree.
So yeah, I would say, you know, we're looking for this film to make a huge impact. Like, we want to form a movement around this film. Again, as I mentioned, we're working with a nonprofit organization. Like my wife has been doing a lot of work as well, putting on like these literacy events with them. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to build basically a movement around the film, alerting people, helping them to understand like not only the importance of literacy, but some of the obstacles that need to be faced, but what we need to do as a community. And the impact, or I would say the response has been amazing already. We screened first at the DC Independent Film Festival. We had a sold out crowd there. I was telling my fellow panelists at the beginning about that. So super proud about that. We were the only ones to sell out at that festival, and then we ended up taking top prize, the Best of Fest at that festival. So, you know, the wind is at our back there. But then just speaking with people after they screened the film, you know, the educators and the people in the criminal justice system, and just hearing them say, everyone needs to see this film. And, you know, speaking, like where I'm having some conversations now with some different educational systems, superintendents. My brother, who was a lieutenant in the New Jersey prison system, he was a corrections officer. So I'm trying to talk to him to see if we can get connected with, you know, some prisons and start to screen it with them. But ultimately, again, we're trying to build a movement around this film, and just based on the early responses, I feel confident, you know, that's something that we're going to be able to do.
Great. And Christy?
I think with Somewhere to Be, what I hope for is that it can be, I mean, I want to see more. I think we only need more stories in the world, right? And I hope the film can help other people to tell their stories too, especially during this time when culturally we're being discouraged from telling certain stories, right? Or those stories are being falsely labeled as this word or that word, when it's just people telling the stories of what it's like for them to be human. Yeah, I'm not the first artist to say this, but you know, I believe that self-representation is a form of narrative justice. And narrative justice is a form of social justice. So I hope that when a few people sit in the audience of a theater and see this film, they might feel validated in telling their own story. Because what's really painful to watch right now is that we are in yet another peak phase of time where people are being encouraged to hide. People are being encouraged to be invisible, and we have to keep going. I know it's easier said than done. I'm sitting up here as a birthright citizen, right? But we can't, like, hiding the stories is not going to work. But I'm very optimistic that there's actually going to be a deluge of storytelling over the next few years in sharp contrast to what we're being told. I mean, artists don't listen, right? Filmmakers don't listen, activists don't listen, communities of colors don't listen to that kind of BS. So I actually feel very optimistic that there's going to be a deluge of stories in art and film. And I hope that my small film, in some small way, can be part of that deluge.
Great. Thank you for the question. Looks like we have time for just one last question, and come forward.
Hi, thanks. I wanted to talk about the intersection of documentary filmmaking with journalism and the importance of the First Amendment. And because we're in this, before this Cleveland audience, I wanted to mention a name that we lost during the pandemic of Mansfield Frazier, who is a local Cleveland icon. I don't know if he's well known outside of the Cleveland community, but in terms of Black icons in the community from here, he's up there with Carl Stokes and Stephanie Tubbs Jones as far as representing people from the community, marginalized people, incarcerated men who are trying to readjust to life outside, things like that. And he was an independent journalist who reported for the Free Press. And we lost him during the pandemic, and I just wanted to touch briefly on the name of his name and other independent journalists to talk about how the importance of solidarity in the community, the importance of navigating your funding sources, and the importance of finding funding sources that are aligned with the spirit of the First Amendment and journalistic integrity and things like that, so that we can, rise all these stories up to make them a part of our cultural fabric. So.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that, and all their stories are doing exactly that. As we're wrapping up here, can each of you tell us what's next for each of you? Do you have any future projects or screening at festivals? I start with you, Asia.
Okay, so come see it tomorrow. Come see Beyond tomorrow at 7:35. It's sold out, but don't let that deter you. I think they probably will have extra tickets. Or come Tuesday, and then we're screening across New York. We're going to Milwaukee, to the Milwaukee Film Festival. We're going to the American Black Film Festival at the end of May in Miami. And then we're continuing to go inside prisons and jails and schools and DA offices, and we're working on the second film right now about someone's first year home and what that looks like. I don't know if you all know anybody who's come home from incarceration, but it is not easy, and we know barriers to housing and employment, but also like things like navigating your love life, or when do you tell someone that you spent time inside, how to get a driver's license, like all these things that we don't think about. This film is going to explore on a very deep level, and yeah, but come tomorrow, come see Beyond, for sure.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'll be there.
Thank you.
Yes, don't worry about that. But yeah, before you go see that one, come see Forever Free and the Illiteracy Playbook tomorrow morning at 9:45. We do have a Monday screening over at
Cedar Lee.
Yes. Cedar Lee. So that's on Monday, midday. But yeah, don't worry about that one right now. Just come out early tomorrow morning at 9:45 at the Ohio Theater. aside from that, what we're planning next, we are going to have just a short broadcast premiere at a local station in Maryland. That's for the community, to kind of honor our local community, because we do tackle a lot of local history as well. So did want to honor them and also become eligible for some broadcast awards. But on June 21st, we have our Greenbelt Red Carpet premiere, because we did get some funding from PG County. So again, that's to honor the community to do it there. So yeah, just trying to fill those seats up and get the community out big. It's going to be a big red carpet event. We're going to dress up. We're going to have a discussion panel. We're going to have an overall good time out there. So if you're in Maryland, Greenbelt area, feel free to come out and check that out. After that, we're moving into educational licensing and distribution. So we're having some discussions with some of the educational platforms now to use them as a vehicle to push the film out. Also discussion with various different school systems and just dealing with a lot of different contexts to try to get that pushed out. Probably won't look to do streaming, because I don't want to step on any of that work with streaming until maybe a year out. So next year we'll look to do streaming, but before that it's all about the community involvement, because again we're trying to build a movement around this around the film. So we want people to come out and see it and discuss it and come up with ideas. So that's what's next for this film. Beyond this film, we are working some pre-production on a couple of other films. One may involve some scuba diving. My son, who also worked on this film, he graduated last year from Full Sail in Florida. So he did some work, cam op and colorist. He's here at the festival as well, but he's checking out some other session right now, doing some networking and all of that. But he already actually has his scuba diving cert. We need another scuba diver. You need at least two. And he's like, come on, Dad, you got to get it. So I'm looking into it. I got to get my stamina up. I may try to get my scuba diving cert over the next few months and then work on that film. And then there's another film that we're starting pre-production on that deals with a DC legend. I don't want to say what his name is, because frankly, I'm surprised nobody's done a film on him yet. It amazes me every day that nobody, because the dude, he's a DC legend. People know him. He's still big in DC, but his story's amazing. So yeah, working some pre-production on that story.
Okay, great. Christy?
Well, what's next for the short film is it is screening in different festivals. It's screening right here in Cleveland tomorrow, Sunday in the evening, around I think either 6:30 or 7 as part of a shorts block. It's also screening on Monday at Cedar Lee around 2:15. It's going to be screening just within the next few weeks at the Dallas Film Festival, the Florida Film Festival, River Run in North Carolina, the DC Film Festival. It's screening at a few festivals in Europe too, so it'll be screening in festivals for a little while. We're also going to screen in schools throughout the country, so if you know of a school who would like to screen it, please reach out. And then in terms of what's next as far as work, I'm working on the feature-length version of the film, and the feature will have some of the same characters as a short film, and the premise will involve something that was inspired from real life, which was that when I was a child, the Ku Klux Klan used to send my family letters, and as a child I was instructed to write them back. And so for a little while it was like I was pen pals with, and my family didn't realize, because we were fairly new, my family was fairly new to the country, didn't realize who they were, because in the South traditionally, and they still do, the Klan has presented themselves as being a church and a Christian group. So as a child in real life, I thought I was writing letters back to a Christian group asking them to not harass us. So the feature film will be partially driven and inspired by that, but very, very fictionalized. And I'm going to take a lot of liberties in telling the story, and it will be a dark comedy. So that's what I'm working on next. I'm hoping to carve out some time. The word time has come up a lot during our discussion today, and part of it is it's always a challenge to find time, to make time. Part of making a story that is not necessarily, the expected familiar story is that the funding to work on the making of it does not just magically appear. But I'm going to do my very best to make the time to work on the feature, along with juggling day jobs and things like that. And whether or not, people think this country is ready, I think we are.
Ready enough. Here all of you
Yeah.
come. Aja Johnson, Director of Beyond. Dion Johnson, Director of Forever Free and the Illiteracy Playbook. And Christy Chan, Director of Somewhere to Be. Can all of you join me in thanking them for being here today? And thank you all. I wish you all the best for continued success. Thank you to the audience for joining us, and thank you to our viewers for watching this. I'm Eric Siler, and thank you, and enjoy the festival. Thank you. Thank you.